Chapter 1. To begin with. Once upon a time, I got sold a dream. I would grow up, big and strong, marry a blonde, my mother was convinced of this, have children, and live happily ever after in a big house, whilst I held down a job as an astronaut, or a train driver, or a fireman. And this wasn't a maybe, something to aspire to. This was my God-given right. This is what was going to happen. All I had to do was wait. Not that I was very good at waiting. I'm still not very good at waiting. I wanted this idyllic life now. I didn't want to wait until next week or some other distant point in the future. I must have told my parents this because they would smile and tell me not to be in so much of a rush. Peter, they would say, school days are the best days of your life. Obviously, they were mistaken. Well, they had to be. When my parents' eyes glazed over and they talked fondly of school days, they must have been recalling the days of their own distant childhood, days sitting around campfires outside the school mud hut, marking bits of slate with chalk, whilst village elders told stories of dragons. Their school days were clearly a far cry from the mixture of humiliation, bullying and boredom that I endured. They had to be, because if they weren't, for school days to be the best days, they would logically have to be followed by something worse. Then I got older, and things got worse. Actually, that's not quite true. They didn't get any worse, not really, but they certainly didn't get much better, and they definitely got more complex. Work turned out to be very similar to school. Different bullies, same rules, just as boring. And whereas I was given money in return for surrendering 5 days out of 7, more money than I'd ever dreamed possible, now there were a slew of people queuing up to take it away from me. And then there were relationships. Just when I'd got classroom note passing down to a fine art, the game changed completely, and note passing wasn't going to cut it. I could go on. But suffice it to say, the initial dream seemed less and less likely. It was clear that I was never going to be an astronaut, or a train driver, or a fireman. It also seemed unlikely that I would ever live in a big house. Big houses needed big money. I was on small to medium money. 2-bedroom flat money. Finally, on my 32nd birthday, I realised there was a distinct possibility that I might never find the blonde. And this was a serious blow. Without the blonde, I might never be married. I might never have children. And whilst I could probably cope without being married or having kids or my blonde actually being blonde, I couldn't imagine being single for the rest of my days. That was unacceptable. Something had to be done. So, for the first time in my life, I started to plan, to make lists, and take control of my own destiny. Many of the techniques in this book are nothing more than the skills I had to develop to avoid a life of bachelorhood. But it worked. Eventually I found the blonde. It took me a few more years, considerable effort on my part, and a somewhat unorthodox approach to dating, but I found her. And we did marry. And when she died in my arms, 3 years later, I was heartbroken. It's a funny thing about losing someone you love. After the shock comes the guilt. Every crossword, every nasty thought, every lie, they all come back to haunt you. And amongst the demons that were queuing up to torment me was the realisation that I wasn't happy. Even when my wife, Kate, had finally come along, I still wasn't happy. There had been happy moments, quite a lot of moments, most of them in the previous 3 years, and most of them down to one person, but they were moments nonetheless. I wanted to be happy all the time, not just occasionally, not just for a moment, and for the second time in my life I decided to tackle a problem in the only way I knew how, by making lists and plans and taking control of